Alright, so I'll just fade that out. How you guys doing today? Hello, happy Sunday to you. It is Sunday morning where I am. Yeah, Bill Maher. We're gonna get to that. Hope you guys are doing well. Oh, I can see myself now. We're definitely live. So hello! And as long as all my sound is going correctly, this should be a successful show. I hope you guys are having a good weekend, or had a good weekend, depending on when you watch this. And yeah, pretty much we're just going to get right into it this time. Just going to jump into the show. Now, before, I'd done something about PragerU, but then I saw this thing. I actually mentioned to Kevin whether or not we should bring it up in a happy hour. And we decided to go with a Jacob Wall thing, which was completely hilarious. And as a consequence, this was sort of like out there as a freebie. You guys might know I've done one video. I've wanted to do some more. I'll do like a personal life catch up at the end of the show. But I did one video about white guilt and this whole idea that there is a normalized discussion about slavery within the white community that pretty much emotionally distances current recipients of the benefits of white supremacy throughout the centuries. It protects them from having or taking any moral accountability when it comes to looking at the system that advantaged them. And people might say, oh yeah, personally, I didn't benefit from white privilege. Well, here's the thing. If your family has wealth to inherit, you're a beneficiary of white privilege in America, because your family was actually allowed to legally build up that wealth and then allowed to legally transfer it and to own property without being harassed or, segregated out of that area. So yes, anything that your family has built up as accumulated wealth in America, if you're beyond a second generation immigrant, you're benefiting from white supremacy. And yes, the Jacob Wall thing was amazing. Agreed. He is such a useless idiot. But so we have this bit with Bill Maher, and it just is shocking to me how much time white people like Bill Maher are willing to spend on defending themselves from acknowledging the way that slavery has created inequality, and instead make fun of people or belittle or misrepresent people who do. So we're just going to look at this because this is the sort of the white guilt he's experiencing. He's taking on the white supremacist past and saying we should downplay it. We shouldn't talk about it. We shouldn't, try to understand the way it's still affecting people today, because that would require some moral accountability. And Bill Maher is unwilling to do that because he's a privileged white guy who likes to think he's progressive, when really he's just a rhino at this point. He's like a California Republican who might be a bit more tolerant on taxes, but he's not a progressive. And he certainly doesn't understand why it's important for white people to take on the effects and the knock-on effects and the hand-me-downs of white supremacy in even close to the way that, say, Germany has come to grips with its moral accountability for the Holocaust, which was a much shorter period of time. It was a massive, loss of life, but it was a shorter period of time. And yet Germans are still processing what, their grandparents did. America is still, has a lot of the same structures that were put in place to protect and preserve white supremacy. And yet we're just supposed to pretend like that's the normal default way. Okay, so anyway, let's see Bill Maher oh, look at the poor white people who have to account for the privilege they experience in a white supremacist society. So I think you guys should be able to hear this. Oh no, you're not going to be able to hear this. That's all right, you're not missing
Liberals
much.
Have to start listening to me when I tell them you can't be more offended than the victim.
I love the way that these people think that they can regulate other people's feelings. They're like, okay, so what he's saying is, you are feeling offended by something. Here's a person, I'm just going to grab a random person who disagrees with you. That person negates all of your feelings and all of your critiques. And who gets to decide that? Bill Maher? Fuck you. Sorry, let's go so much for the monetization on this episode. But seriously, what he wants to do is say, I get to tell you what you can and can't feel, because you're trying to tell me what you feel And that makes me feel uncomfortable. So you're wrong for your feelings and opinions. That's my opinion. But my opinion and feelings trump your opinion and feelings. This is the arrogance of, the elite, white, privileged men who think that they could just, the man says no. And then society has to go, you're right. No, Bill Maher, retire. Honestly, move out of the way. You're old. You're like, and I know, ageism. Yeah, he's had his time on air. His opinion is overemphasized, and he's given far too much of a platform based on the fact that he's literally just a comedian who other people write his jokes. So no, I'm not going to apologize or say that it's ageist. He's had his 40 years. Move over. It's time for some other people, younger people with different lived experiences that don't live in your little, I sleep with supermodels, I hang out with California Hollywood stars bubble. Talk to some actual people who had wider lived experiences than he has.
It happened again last week when presidential contender Andrew Yang faced criticism because he said that SNL should not have fired comedian Shane Gillis over racist comments Gillis made about Asians.
So again, you're going to pull one example from one Asian person and go, look, this one person isn't offended. Therefore, I'm going to dismiss anyone in the group who was offended, or or people who were offended because it was a racist thing and it wasn't directed to them. I can actually still be offended by racist comments, even if I'm not the target. I can be offended by transphobia. For transphobia, I'm not trans. I can be offended by homophobia. I'm not gay. So this sort of attempts to delegitimize people's reactions when they see something they think is bigoted only helps create a safe space for bigots. That's what it does. It's trying to regulate people who saying this is wrong and force us to tolerate the worst bigotry in a society. Just no, we don't have to put up with that kind of stuff.
That's when the internet did what it does best and deemed Yang a racist for...
Of course, he doesn't mention, again, any person other than the one Asian person who happens to agree with him.
For not being offended. Because if he wasn't offended, well, someone had to be.
And he assumes here that the only people who were doing this were white people. Does he know the ethnic background of every person who criticized Yang? I don't think so. Of course he doesn't. It's Twitter. It's anonymous. But the fact is that he's just going to lump it in as this is a problem white people have, is attempt to cleave off white people from owning that institutional accountability that we have inherited. And we have to decide now, as our generation, do we transform it? Or do we just leave it as white supremacist default for the next generation?
There was a study done last year where people were asked to rate their feelings about various races, and white liberals were the only group that has a bias against themselves.
Right. You know why? Because we see the institutional racism and bigotry, and we see the racist Beckys, and we see the police shootings, because we are on woke Twitter, and we are paying attention to those things, and we're seeing the systematic oppression, and we are upset by it. And he wants us to be ashamed for being ashamed about white supremacy. This is exactly the kind of psychological white guilt that I was talking about in that video. It's not the white guilt of, I'm carrying around the burden of slaveholders that weren't part of my family. It's I have to dismiss legitimate criticism of institutional and individual level racism because to do that would be an attack on America and my sense of being a white American. That's what he's defending here. Is his white privilege to not give a crap about the experiences and the racism of others. And white people like me who see it and want to call it out, we're the problem. You can see why this is a subtle form of white supremacy. It's a way to not deal with the current problems, the current racism, because you say the current racism is, not legitimate because we already dealt with the past racism, so clearly we can't have racism in the present. No. Just no. And when white people like Bill Maher try to shame other white people out of understanding That is a form of maintaining white supremacy. So what he's doing right now, he would of course deny it, but what he's doing is protecting the idea that white people are in positions of power undeservedly, and that's fine. Don't criticize the system that undeservedly put those people in place. If you criticize and you acknowledge that, then you're the problem, white people. That is a perpetuation of white supremacy.
They want to hang out only with people who are not them.
Again, not true. He's just making stuff up for a point, not because he actually understands what the critique is here.
That's like your mother preferring the neighbor's kids.
Oh, right. Okay. So we have to prefer our own. White people have to look out for white people? Or maybe the white liberals give less of an emphasis to their white identity than they give to their American identity. This is it. He's defending in-group preferences. It's fucking racist. He's racist. It's seriously defending white supremacy, white power supremacy, white economic power, white social power, white political power. And saying those things are just natural. If you want to criticize racism, liberals, you're the problem because you hate yourself. Not that you hate the white supremacist institutions that you see with your own eyes. No. That's not the problem. That white supremacy isn't the problem. You're criticizing it and acknowledging it and owning it. That's the problem. And this is how white supremacy gets passed on from generation to generation.
There is a weird self-loathing going on among white liberals, and it's not helping anyone.
Right. Don't acknowledge the institutional discrimination and supremacy. Just make sure it sounds like individual white people who are bad actors. And then we don't have to be accountable for all of these advantages we have or the system we have, which is dominated by men who look like Bill Maher, don't look like me, don't look like anyone who's not white, right? He's really defending a system of people who look like him. Cis men, rich, privileged, somewhat well-educated, and mouthy. That's what he's defending. Not Americans. Not equality.
Lifting up those whose society has cheated or forsaken, that's liberalism.
No, it's not. It's just not lifting up individuals. It's acknowledging a racist system and undermining it. It's not like, oh, here's a racist system, let me find one person and lift them up. No, you have to acknowledge the entire system is flawed. Whether it's the voting system or the justice system or the education system, it's not about individually lifting up black kids in schools. It's about fixing the segregation in our schools, both the physical segregation and the economic segregation in terms of state support and taxpayer funded school quality, teacher pay, all of that stuff. That's not just, segregated neighborhoods didn't magically get, end up with fewer resources. That's a result of white people's racism institutionalized through policy. Until you acknowledge that, you're going to think that helping individual black kids with, getting a nicer desk or getting computers in their school is going to fix the problem, and it's not. Bill, you idiot.
Hating all things white is just tedious virtue signaling.
Again, there's a difference between legitimate criticism and blanket hating. And he is conflating the two because it makes him uncomfortable to acknowledge his privilege, his advantages, the fact that he got way more than he deserved because he was a white guy who was taken seriously by other white guys. And other people who were probably more talented were passed over because they weren't white, they weren't men, they weren't cis. He rode a long way on his privilege, especially when it comes to the crap jokes, really bad, predictable jokes that he gets away with. He's such a mediocre talent, right? So no, if you criticize white supremacy, white institutions, that's not hating white people. Any more than Germans who criticize Nazis and the Germans who went along with the Nazis and were complicit are hating German people. And Americans, especially white Americans who buy into this white supremacy, that white people are really okay. And it's just not, it's not a good thing if you criticize white people. Feel very uncomfortable owning centuries of white supremacy that keep us in these positions of power. We have a natural advantage.
You look like Justin Timberlake in Bad Teacher.
just hate slavery so much. Slavery's the worst. If I could go back in time and undo slavery, I would.
This isn't real life, Bill. And also, this is a bunch of white people who are being made fun of by other white people who want to make it ridiculous to criticize slavery and its historical legacy. So well done. You're helping to shame white people who want to be part of the solution. So what does that make Bill Maher? Part of the problem?
I hate it.
Yeah, basically a conservative writer's wet dream of what a liberal is. And Bill Maher's like, ha ha ha, look at these white people. Anytime you say you don't like slavery, you're just hating on white people and being ridiculous. Stop criticizing institutional racism in America.
The answer to mass incarceration is to stop putting undeserving blacks in prison.
No, Bill. It's institutionalized racism that white people consciously and unconsciously support. So it starts with the education. It actually starts with reparations. We have generations of people who lost out on the wealth that they could have passed down because they weren't paid for their labor, and their children were stolen from them and their families were destroyed. And then they were given their legal freedom, but basically their economic status was kept the same. Their schools were underfunded. They were segregated. They were pushed to the margins of society. They were kept out of positions of power. And now we have neighborhoods of a cycle of poverty as a direct result. So no, it's not just about like some judges, having neutral views on their sentencing. It's an entire system that was set up to incarcerate black people, to take away their rights to vote by giving them felonies, to make them unemployable by putting them in a prison system that's increasingly becoming a private prison system. And if you call my critiques, all of these critiques, according to Bill Maher, is me being a self-hating white person. No, you know what's a self-hating white person? Someone who feels like they need to defend this white supremacy. That's him. Oh, yeah. Here, where is he? He's up here. Where's my finger? Wrong direction. There we go. Where's my finger? That's a quote for the day. All right, old rich guy whining some more. Let's go on with it.
Not to put more white people in Twitter jail.
Yeah, so he's basically, comparing actual discrimination and incarceration of black people to the suffering of white people in Twitter jail. What a privileged piece of crap. I stopped watching Bill Maher a couple of years ago, and he just became completely intolerable. But this kind of stuff just reinforces me feeling like I made the right decision. Oh yeah, defend that white
Every
racism.
thought needs a disclaimer now. The other day I heard a guy say, I realize I'm only speaking as a white male and I acknowledge our tragic history of oppression, but you left your lights on.
Again, he's belittling attempts to acknowledge the systematic racism and basically shame people and white people into silence. White people don't acknowledge and own these racist systems. It makes Bill Maher feel very uncomfortable when you talk about the fact that, black people are executed by police in a systematic way, and that's a result of actually systemic racism. That is a result of a white supremacy government that was set up by the founders and has been our legacy ever since. Our foundation was a white supremacist political structure, patriarchal as well. And everything else that has followed from that. But don't tell that to Bill Maher, because then he might feel slightly uncomfortable about how privileged he is in our society.
Look, white privilege is real. And yes, you have some advantages for being white, but you also have some disadvantages.
Seriously? Oh, they just cancel each other out. This is like Bill Maher's trying to say, oh, and me too, we need to distinguish between the men who grab your ass and the ones who rape you. Well, actually, it's a spectrum of abuse. And he wants to say these things aren't as bad, so we don't have to take them as seriously as these things over here. And he does the same thing. Yeah, there's white privilege isn't bad, but this isn't so bad over here. We need to make sure, we put things in their proper place and they cancel each other out. Because, white people are disadvantaged. Let's see what he has to say. It'd be very interesting.
Many of you were born with a terrible personality.
I guess that's supposed to be funny.
I'm sorry.
They knew. You know what?
No, well, I'll fire the director. But folks, you don't need to advertise it. What's with the "I'm embarrassed to be white" subgenre on the...
See? Oh no, Bill Maher is irritated. Wait. So people can't have emotional reactions and be offended on behalf of others. Bill Maher, as a white person, I'm telling you, you shouldn't be offended by these comments. Right? So you're going to call on Andrew Yang as the one Asian person that you saw as a Asian person to cancel out all of the other criticism. So I'm just telling you right now, Bill, you shouldn't feel, I don't feel insulted by this, so neither should you. Your feelings and your ideas are completely illegitimate. If he can do it, so can I, right? Why does this bother him so much? Why is it so important that he gives time on the national show to shame white people who are acknowledging systemic racism? When I see racist Beckys, yeah, I feel embarrassed. We don't talk about problems in the white community the way that people talk about problems in the black community. We don't talk about the fact that we produce more mass murderers than any other ethnic group in the United States. What's happening with white culture that we keep producing mass shooters and mass killers? No. Don't talk about that. It'll make white people feel uncomfortable. Oh, calling white people as a group when you're tying it to the patterns of mass shooters is racist. This is basically a way to say, don't criticize white people. We will graciously acknowledge, according to Bill Maher, racism when it suits us. But, if you go too far and make me actually feel uncomfortable about being white and its linkages with white supremacy, you're being mean to me, white liberals,
The internet. I'm finding myself constantly embarrassed to be white. I'm watching Tall Girl. I've never been so embarrassed to be white. Retweet if you're embarrassed to be white. Jesus, fuck.
Again, he's defending white supremacy here by shaming people who see patterns of behavior in white culture that need to be reformed. Bill Maher, defender of white supremacy. And again, he would say no, but the kind of subtle white supremacy that refuses to take personal accountability and responsibility for the institutions and also the attitudes that we've inherited, and see them as a problem to be solved, see them as something to be embarrassed by. Yeah, that is part of the process of decoupling white identity from white supremacy, and Bill Maher makes me feel embarrassed to be white. Yes, thank you, Natalie. That's precisely right. Yeah, because, what Bill Maher is saying is that white people's feelings of being uncomfortable are more important than actually acknowledging systemic and individual level racism. Oh, you're making me feel uncomfortable for being white. Oh, I don't like that. I want to do racial justice on my terms.
Rosanna Arquette tweeted, "I'm sorry I was born white and privileged. It disgusts me and I feel so much shame."
Now, of course, I don't know what she was saying this in reaction to, which would be important to know. I don't know what happened on August 7th. Without context, it's really unfair. But of course, he's not interested in fairness. He wants to shame, especially those, because, all right, white women are trash. A lot of white women, I get that, are trash. But in terms of if you put it into the aggregate of men, women, in the population, you're going to get more white women voting for a Democratic candidate than men are. So, and white women have historically as well, women in general, but you want to talk about a group, and more in favor of LGBT rights than white men, and they just kind of skew a bit more left on stuff. So when a white woman acknowledges something that was beyond her control, being born white, and also acknowledging the system that she was born into, he wants to shame her for not defending that white supremacy.
Exactly.
Shut up, Bo.
You think it's hard being a black man in a white man's world? Try being a white woman who feels bad about you being a black man in a white man's world.
Again, he's trying to do a comparison. It's just disgusting. Bill Maher is trash. Yeah, her acknowledging her privilege and being disgusted by it and wanting and being moved by it, he's basically saying, oh, now you're saying you have it worse off than a black man. This is another way to defend that white supremacy. Don't feel bad about your privilege. Roxana Arquette, don't feel bad about your privilege. Because if you do, you make me wonder if maybe I'm an undeserving, overrated hack. Which he is, of course.
Look, none of us chose to be born white. Not even Ed Sheeran.
It's not my fault I'm privileged. It's not my fault I benefit from white supremacy. Yeah, if you don't acknowledge it, you don't own it, kind of it is, because you're just perpetuating it.
So just stop.
No, don't stop. Tell people like Bill Maher to shut up. Tell people like Bill Maher that he's actually protecting white supremacy when he is protecting white people's feelings more than black people's and brown people's lives. He's the one who needs to sit down and shut up. But of course, being a wealthy, white, cis man who's gotten by on mediocre comedy for the last 40 years, he's got a platform in which to tell other white people to shut up about criticizing white supremacy. And I'm on YouTube with 400, 40, or maybe if I'm lucky, 40 viewers. So who's privileged, Bill? Really? Who needs to shut up and give other people the microphone? I think you need to time's to retire. Bill. Go do YouTube videos and make appearances on shows with elderly men like Hardball with Chris Matthews and shout at each other across the camera.
Because you know what might be the worst part of white shame? You bore the fuck out of black people at parties.
Yeah, don't acknowledge white supremacy to people of color, because otherwise, you might actually set a standard for owning the shit that you benefit from. And that would require people like Bill Maher to do the same. It's all about shaming people who are trying to acknowledge and understand and reform systemic level, as well as individual level, racism in America. And Bill Maher is basically saying, as long as we don't talk about it, it's not really a problem. As long as we talk to other white people about how cool we are that we ended slavery and we gave black people their freedoms and we let them have their civil rights and, oh, look at what all the white people did to fix the problems of slavery, while in the entire time we've been doing this, undeserving legacy graduates have been going to Harvard and Yale because their parents did, and undeserving, other scholarships, students who otherwise academically wouldn't qualify, get by on our white system. Bill Maher is he's basically preserving white supremacy by shaming white people into not talking about their white supremacy in our society. The supreme positions of power and influence and status occupied by white people. Great. And then, of course, pull in the one black person to be the token. Oh yeah, legitimize my position. On camera. Here we go. Let me just rope this person in. What a piece of shit, Bill Maher.
I know.
And he learned how to dance.
You meet black people and say things like, Black Panther was so meaningful to me.
How about, damn, America's a racist-ass country. Or, how about asking people their real opinions and listening instead of talking? How about this, Bill? Maybe your problem is that you think that dealing with this stuff is all about white people talking, and maybe it's about white people listening. You're so used to talking and being listened to that I think that he assumes that that's how everybody else operates. Bill Maher, POS.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a cultural milestone for you. I have taken an informal sampling among some black folks I know, and the consensus seems to be awareness, yes, is great. White people certainly should acknowledge they've had an easier go of it. But black folks are not asking whites to always be flagellating themselves.
Who said we were? Again, he is pulling a bunch of cherry-picked examples. I would love to know, again, what Roxana Arquette was talking about in relation to what happened on the 7th of August. It would be very interesting. But again, he's mansplaining the limits to which we can acknowledge white privilege, white supremacy, and systemic racism in America. That's not his job. It's not your job, Bill, to regulate that. And it's not your job to poll Black people you know, probably in the entertainment industry, because that's not a really representative sample, and then speak on their behalf. Any more than it's, your job to take your one Black guest and turn her into your prop to legitimize your claim that white people need to shut up. So no.
Because it makes everything awkward.
Oh, yes. The famous awkwardness, which is so much more important. White people's, awkwardness with people is so much more important than lives. I'm kind of getting tired. Anyone else tired of Bill Maher? I'm tired of Bill Maher. Let's move on. I'm done, honestly. I'm done. What's the point? This guy is useless. He's just we know what he's gonna say. So, all right, let me just go here. I'm going to check the chat, and then we're going to go over to PragerU. I think it's going to be kind of just a 1 hour show today, because I did a show on, was it Wednesday? And then I did a happy hour on Thursday. Then I did Drunk Tank on Friday night, and then I did a rolling session. I don't know that it was broadcast on Chris Yossi's channel, but I did a D&D session till 1:30 yesterday on a Hangout, and now I've got this show. So that's 5 days in a row that I've been on YouTube. That's enough. That's enough. All right. Okay. So it sounds like everybody in the chat is of the opinion that Bill Maher is a twat. It seems the consensus, which I would also agree with, if I'm honest. He's just, I'm tired. It's not that okay, here's the thing about my opinion on Bill Maher. Of course, he has a right to give his opinions, but he's got this platform where people take him seriously, far more seriously than he deserves. And a lot of that undeserved seriousness is direct result of his skin color, is a direct result of the fact that he has been elevated. He's not that funny. Honestly, if you listen to his monologue, I don't know if he writes his own monologue, but it's so predictable at this point. You can see the punchlines coming, and usually they are at the expense of humiliating somebody else. He's just like an old school comic who's past his sell-by date, desperately trying to cling onto his relevance through his power and his status. And I just don't, who cares what Bill Maher thinks? Honestly. And clearly I do, because I'm refuting him. But I'm putting him up here because he deserves to be refuted. Because he gets a pass on this stuff. And it's important that white people actually stand up to white people who are trying to tell us not to acknowledge racism in America, and not try and taking on this stuff and acknowledging it, owning the problems of white culture, owning the white supremacy of our government and our economics and the way we structure our society, who has social power and social status. He wants to just be like, oh no, you can do this little part over here. And this little part over here is what he's been doing his whole life. And you know what he's done in terms of solving the problems of racism? Nothing. That's what that little corner of, we should say slavery is bad, but, we really shouldn't do too much about it. And yeah, isn't it terrible that police shoot people? But we shouldn't listen to Black Lives Matter when it comes to their political agenda. And, it's really important that we have a diverse society, but we get, Black people who want to express themselves, like by kneeling at a flag during the anthem, using their freedom of expression to draw attention to the slaughter of unarmed Black people by the police that they pay their taxes to fund. Well, that's a little too far. And it's that kind of contained, self-reflective white guilt that excuses the white supremacy going on and on and on. So let's see. Essence of Thought, I see Cassiopeia writes, Essence of Thought has a video that I haven't yet watched about a Christian calling for Bill Maher to be tortured. I have sympathy with that call. I don't want him to be tortured. I just want to be able to sit down and have him shut up for 5 minutes while I womansplain to him why his mansplaining and white-splaining is not tolerable. Intolerable. That's the word I was looking for. All right. Normally it sounds like twat. When Americans say it, oh, well, I learned how to say faff and twat whilst in the UK. Another insult that I love is calling somebody a muppet. Oh, you muppet. Shut it. So good. Agreed, Americans usually can't say twat. Like I said, I learned it in the native soil. I didn't learn it from television. So I can say faff and twat, and what else can I say with a soft ah? Moaning about stuff is fine, but heaven forbid, people actually try to bring about change. Exactly, Madeline. You can't be too guilty as a white person, or it just starts to make people like Bill Maher feel uncomfortable. Just don't go away mad, Bill Maher, as Donna says, or Dundonison. Just go away. I like weapon as an insult. It seems to be particularly Scottish. Use weapon as an insult in a sentence, James, please. I don't know what that would sound like. Okay, have we all seen the PragerU graduation video? I saw no PragerU graduation video. I haven't picked a PragerU video. So, tell you what, guys, I'm really running out of coffee already this morning. That late night gaming, which is a lot of fun, but I was like 2 in the morning, and then I kept getting up in the middle of the night to, with the guy from Rumford, and dated a guy from Sunderland. Pretty long term, so I was deeply immersed in British pronunciation. Here's what I think I will do. Let's look at their 5-minute videos. I'll put up a screenshot. Come on, POS. Here we go. We're gonna not listen to their trailer ad. Let's go to their playlist. We'll go to the 5-minute videos. Trying to see if there's anything else. Latest 5-minute videos. What do you think? 5-minute videos as opposed. No, I want to see the playlist.
My great-great-grandfather, Silas Burgess.
Oh man, yeah, the self-hating I don't deserve reparations, where you get one person from the group who says what you want them to say, and then you just point to them anytime anyone, whether from that ethnic group or not, says anything different, and go, well, this one person over here said they don't want reparations, so that delegitimizes any other black person's opinion, and it definitely delegitimizes your opinion as a white person. But you as a white person don't get to point to all the black people who say, actually, reparations are a pretty important thing for our community, considering what was stolen from us. And they would be right. Stolen, theft, white culture stole labor, lives, the loves of black people for centuries, and we did nothing as a society to redress any of that. Go, oh, here, you're not a slave anymore. Now aren't you going to be grateful for me? Bow down and kiss my feet. Kiss my white feet for giving you your basic human rights, which I've denied you. Get the fuck out. All right. Here is the video list. I'm just going to go with what I can see here in the list. And you guys, wow. We'll start here about reparations. We'll go down to the Charlottesville lie. And you can't see anything. You can see nothing. You see zero. Sorry, I get mixed up on if I'm on the preview view or the program view, because I'm always looking at the one I'm setting up, not the one that's being put out, which is a problem. So here are your choices. I will put on... Oh, I have to add music to this scene. Hold on. Does that one have the music? No. Okay. Oh, no, it should be on there. If I do this. Okay. I am going to go make coffee. So, I see. Hold on, there's a problem. You can't see the list very well. No, I guess you can see the list okay. Let me just move the fireplace for you guys a little bit. I'll make the fireplace a little bit smaller. You are going to vote on which PragerU video we are going to watch whilst I make coffee. So, während ich Kaffee machen, how do you say? Auswählen Sie welches Sendung du euch schaut gerne an. How is that for terrible Sunday morning German? I think what I just said is, while I'm making coffee, you guys get to vote on which show we watch. That was terrible. I really I'm not good at constructing German sentences. All right, you guys, can you see that font, or do I have to make it a little bit bigger? I'm going to hope you guys can see that. Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll turn up the music. Turn it on. Okay. And I will come back as soon as my coffee is ready. And you guys vote in the chat. I will be right back. And if anyone comes in and doesn't know what's going on, update them as to the fact that we're just taking a quick voting break. All right, back in about 3 to 5 minutes. Well, hello there, my pretties. How are you doing? How was your break? I have coffee. It's basically a food group, as far as I'm concerned. Chocolate, coffee, chocolate, and cigarettes. 5 a day. 3 of my 5 a day. All right. So, what did you guys pick by popular demand? All right, scrolling down. Charlottesville, government, Charlottesville. Okay, looks like Charlottesville had a lot of votes. What were the choices? What was the middle thing again? All right. I'm just seeing a lot of Charlottesville. I've seen that like 4 times. 1, 2. Yeah. Government made for you. Too bad it was. I wish I could do a poll here. Yeah, chocolate and tea is good. Yeah, sounds good. All right, so how about this time? Big government is a bad argument. Since people, there was a lot of stuff for the Charlottesville lie. So if I remember how the government made you fat. Oh wait, I thought it was all about individual responsibility. Okay. Let's go with the Charlottesville one because that's going to be horrific, but you guys wanted it, so okay. And then next time you can maybe go for how the government made you fat. But this is going to be, I'm sure, awful. Let me first guess. I have never watched this video before and I have no idea who's in it, but I'm going to guess they're going to get some sort of person of color in here to tokenize and say, oh, it's really the white liberals who are complaining about Charlottesville that are the problem. All right, let me move my mic a little bit forward there. Excellent. And yeah, let's go ahead. All right, who is this guy?
Politicians lie. We all know that. This is not an indictment of all politicians.
Steve Cortez. Who is he? Political analyst. Steve Cortez. Let's see. Find out about this guy. Because you have to look, let's see. If someone is on the he's a marketing expert. If someone is taking money from Prager, you know that they're a piece of shit. I mean, honestly, let's just be honest about that. They don't have intellectually honest people on. So there's his Twitter. Does he have got a bio? How do I see this more? All right, so he appears daily on CNBC's Fast Money. Okay, so he's not a political analyst. He's a money analyst. He appears frequently during Fast Money's halftime report. He's founded a consulting firm providing real-time market research to brokers, dealers, hedge funds, and sovereign wealth funds. So that's his qualification. He makes money for people who have a lot of money. And he has I really want to know like his background. Like, does he have a degree in political science or anything? Trying to find any background on him. Really struggling. So I'll go to his Premier Speakers Bureau bio. Media messaging. He's an informal advisor to the president. All right, so now we know this guy is, he's a Trump shill. I don't know his background, but also he just looks. So we'll see if he claims his own identity politics here or not.
It's simply part of the game.
All right. So he's saying all politicians lie. It's simply part of the game. Which, of course, fascists want you to think that everybody lies because then when people tell you the truth, you won't pay attention. Fascist supporter, fascist enabler. He is literally the Gorka levels of quack. Okay, thank you, Alex, for that update. I happily have no idea who this tool is. But we're going to listen to him read out a PragerU propaganda script. So clearly he's a piece of crap who will do anything for money.
It's our job as informed citizens to figure out the truth.
Wait, so all politicians lie, so we have to listen to the lies and then figure out the truth. There's, I don't think Adam Schiff lies. I think, there's a lot of politicians who don't lie. But of course, if you just assume they are all lying, then these guys will tell you their truth, which is about preserving the white patriarchy, white supremacist patriarchy.
And that's where journalists and the media come in. They are supposed to help us ferret out fact from fiction.
Wow. Wouldn't it be great if Fox News did that? As opposed to just repeating the White House lie, unsubstantiated, about Joe Biden. And Trump is throwing everybody under the bus now. I saw today that he's going to blame Rick Perry for part of the Ukraine call. And Rick Perry is resigning in November. Trump called on Romney to be impeached. He's such a moron. Senators can't be impeached. They can be recalled. They can't be impeached. Oh, by the way, before we start, total timeout. I don't know if you guys saw my, this is completely distraction. So for those of you who don't care about this, go ahead by 2 minutes. But I don't know if you've noticed today, I'm lit so much better. Oh, I've got the music coming back on now. I need to turn that down. I don't know if you saw me on Twitter, but I have a new DIY key light that I thought I would try out today. So on this side is my natural light window, which I kind of use sort of as a fill light / key light, but it was really blowing me out in terms of the lighting. I was super overexposed, as you can see. So I just put a little sheet over that to control the amount of light coming in on this side. And then over here, I don't know if you guys can see, but I have my new key light that I made out of LED lights and a shiny bowl. So here we go. That's my painting. You guys might recognize from some of my other videos. But yeah, that is got a dimmer on it. Look at this. It can go up or down. Oh, it's so cool. So now I can control, if I want to use this as a fill light or a key light, I can control the amount of exposure I have. And I'm also learning how to light with glasses so that I don't end up with too much glare. Look at me getting all professional, you guys. Pretty excited. Right, so I wanted to talk about my key light DIY project at the beginning of the show, and I never got around to it. And the time dimension won't let you know. You got to sit through it if you're live. Sorry. But yeah, I think that looks a little dim. I might have to turn that up a bit more. Yeah, that's I think where I was before. I'm so happy. I know it's a little thing, but it really makes me happy. All right. Now that we have an emotional reset, we've reset emotionally from a little bit of Prager crap. We're just going to have to go here and listen to him complain that the liberal media actually points out racism.
So when they get a fact wrong, that's bad.
When they get a fact wrong, they issue a correction because that's what humans do. We err. But nobody erred about Charlottesville when it comes to white supremacist murder.
When they get a fact wrong, know it's wrong, and don't correct it, that's worse.
That's Fox News.
That's not getting a fact wrong.
That's Fox News.
That's a lie.
That's Fox News.
And that's journalistic malfeasance.
That's Fox News.
The best, or maybe worst, example of this followed a presidential press conference at Trump Tower on Tuesday, August 15th.
The worst media error ever was when the press quoted Trump accurately. That's going to be my prediction. Oh, you know what, you guys? I'm so sorry. You can't see the video. I'm an idiot. Again, I got the wrong window up. Do you want to see his face? Should we go back? I'm really sorry. Yes, thank you. I see the error now. All right, we're just going to go back because you couldn't see anything because I was mucking about. How far back do we need to go? I think to about here. All right. Apologies. I got so excited about my light. So excited. All right. Here we go. Now you can watch his mug.
They are supposed to help us ferret out fact from fiction. So when they get a fact wrong, that's bad.
You guys really want to watch his face?
Wrong,
okay.
Know it's wrong, and don't correct it, that's worse. That's not getting a fact wrong. That's a lie. And that's journalistic malfeasance.
And as I said, Fox News, Fox News, Fox News, Fox News, Fox News. Hashtag
the best,
facts.
or maybe worst, example of this followed a presidential press conference at Trump Tower on Tuesday, August 15th, 2017. You remember what happened that previous weekend. A group of white supremacists held a white pride rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. The ostensible reason was to protest the removal of a statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee.
Yeah, by the way, as long as we're here, let's just say we should have as our state policy to never honor traitors or their flags. And so if you want to have a Confederate flag on your private property to show you're a piece of crap, that's your right. That's your private property. That's your freedom of speech. But we should give no quarter, no honor, no place to the flag of traitors or their leaders in our public spaces, on our public flags, or in our public buildings. Ever, ever, ever. Down with traitors. Down with the Confederacy. Never again. Just saying.
An Antifa group showed up to counter-protest.
Why do they keep calling it Antifa? Antifascismus. How hard is that? Antifa. Antifascismus. It's really hard to take people seriously when they can't pronounce basic words correctly.
The mayor and the police were totally unprepared to deal with the violence that...
Notice that they're white. Of course they are. Of course they are. Because people in power are white men. That's how it works. White men are the natural leaders. So of course we always put a white male as the figure of power in our videos.
Ensued. Tragically, a young woman, Heather Heyer, was run over and killed by a neo-Nazi.
No, she was murdered. And it wasn't tragically, it was deliberately. Disgustingly, a neo-Nazi deliberately drove his vehicle into a crowd of protesters and murdered Heather Heyer. She was not passively run over and killed by a Nazi. She was murdered by a Nazi. A white supremacist dude who had been marching with other white supremacist dudes saying Jews will not replace us the night before. So she was murdered by a white supremacist.
The press conference itself was raucous. The media was antagonistic.
Poisoning the well. How does he know? Again, this is typical Prager. The media was doing this. The media, as if everybody in that room, it can be clumped into the media and attributed with one motivation.
The president was combative. Out of it all, one phrase eclipsed the thousands of words exchanged. The media reported that President Trump described neo-Nazis as very fine people. Yeah.
Yeah. When you say there were very fine people on both sides, then the both sides, which he had framed as the neo-Nazis and the counter protesters to the neo-Nazis, if you're saying there's fine people on both sides, you're saying Nazis are very fine people. It's just how the English language works. I know it's really difficult for these conservative haters to accept the logical consequences of Trump's internal just racist core, but it's the truth.
Only he didn't. In fact, he didn't even hint at it. Just the opposite. He condemned the neo-Nazis in no uncertain terms.
Are you going to show the clip?
So then, who were the fine people he mentioned?
Okay. Should we go look at this clip?
He was referring to another group of Charlottesville demonstrators who came out that weekend. Protesters who wanted the Robert E. Lee statue removed, and protesters who wanted to keep the statue and restore the park's original name. This is what President Trump said about those peaceful protesters. You also had some very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue.
So what he wants to say is the white people who are pro-race, white supremacy, pro-treason of the South, pro the defense of human slavery, pro the theft of the labor lives and money of black people for centuries, those people are very fine people? No. Let's since they aren't showing the clip, let's just watch what was actually going on, because I don't trust PragerU. All right. Yeah, conservatives don't. All right. Sorry, we'll go back. I'm looking for a video of him saying it. Where's the video? Show me the video. Ah, here we go. All right.
You're putting what you're calling the alt.
Is there a way for me to... sorry, I didn't want to make the mini player. My bad. What I'm trying to do is get the closed captions to be a bit more bright, but not getting that. So we're going to start here with the press conference. It's a 4-minute clip. Hopefully we won't need the whole 4 minutes.
You're putting what you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane.
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, or you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
He's blaming Antifa as opposed to the white supremacists. So what she says is, again...
You're putting what you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane.
She's saying you're taking the alt-left and white supremacists and putting them on the same moral plane. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm just saying that the left was the one who were violent. I'm actually saying the white supremacists here weren't the problem. That's what he's actually saying. Because he's a racist POS. Okay.
On this side, you can call the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
He's only blaming the left.
On both sides, sir? You said there was hatred, there was violence on both sides.
Well, I do think there's blame, yes. I think there's blame on both sides.
Gren, the framing here is white supremacists and the alt-left. Not talking about Confederate people here yet.
You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either.
I'm so sick of him telling us what we think and feel. He doesn't know this, and he uses it to rope people into the conspiracy because he's a fascist wannabe. He's a fascist aspiring strongman dictator.
And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
If they reported it accurately, you'd make people who are opposed to fascism look just as bad as fascists, which is really good if you're in favor of fascism. If you want to stop anti-fascist activism or protests or individuals, then equating them to the fascists they're trying to stop is the best fascist tactic you can take.
Kill the person. Heather hired Charlottesville. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest.
Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as you, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group,
So he's talking about white supremacists and the alt-left here. Very fine people on both sides, right? So PragerU is just lying to your face.
Excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
These were the it was a white nationalist rally to do that. There wasn't like a separate, no, PragerU's just lying to you.
Well, no, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down?
This is how defending white supremacy works. You acknowledge the treason of the Confederacy, and they want to say, now you're criticizing the founders. If you criticize slavery, you're criticizing the founders, therefore we can't criticize slavery. That's how you perpetuate white supremacy. All right, so basically, this is not true at all. We've just watched it with our own eyes. He talks about both sides, fine people on both sides with relation to the white supremacists and the and Antifa, and he doesn't distinguish. He doesn't say, look, I condemn this, but then there were these other people who were only there about the statue, and those people were okay. No, that's not at all what happened. And the reason why they can't show you him saying that so far is because that's not what happened in the press conference.
And the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. A few moments later, in case there would be any misunderstanding, he makes his meaning even more explicit. I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists. They should be condemned totally. Lest you have any...
All right, so now I got to go back and watch it again. And, you know, I think what we should acknowledge here is it's something that I saw brought up, I don't know, it's not original with Cog's video, but this idea of marbling, where you condemn people in public who are white supremacists without really condemning them. And what we saw was that Trump definitely was like not punished for his comments. So we're going to go back and see what exactly happens.
Excuse me. Are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him?
Again, this has nothing to do with the Confederacy or the treason of the Confederacy.
Now we're going to take down his statue.
So you conflate that, with the Confederacy and the actual act of treason and war in ways that make white people feel like they have to pretend.
They should be condemned totally.
Okay.
But you had many people in that. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people.
So what he leaves out is that Trump basically goes along and defends the idea of keeping up a Confederate statue to a traitor, to the person who led the army in treason against the United States, and conflating the founders with the treasonous rebels in the Civil War to give slavery a pass. And then he basically says, those white people who just want to defend that treason, those are different from the white supremacists. Well, this is not like two clear groups. White supremacists also think that. And he wants to create a false... So, yeah, Prager you not being truthful.
And I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated...
You just have openly white, racist white people. Yeah.
...them absolutely unfairly.
If you defend slavery, you might not get good coverage in the press. If you defend the treason of the Southern rebels. So what Trump does here is because he says everything. This is what people... this is an authoritarian leader playbook. You say everything. We've seen it with Trump. He said, I didn't do anything wrong in the phone call. I didn't ask for a quid pro quo. And then he goes out and he actually asks for the quid pro quo, saying I would do an investigation if I were them. And then he says, I did nothing wrong. So Prager, you can cherry pick out one little phrase and saying, oh, here he says he's distinguishing between white supremacists and I guess the violent white supremacists and just the POS white supremacists who want to defend treason against the Constitution, I guess. But the way that we know it is that that doesn't exchange this. His later attempts to narrow it doesn't change his earlier comments saying that there were fine people on both sides. And they want to say, oh, he said there were fine people, but he didn't mean the violent white supremacists. He just meant the non-violent white supremacists, because that's so much better.
Any doubts that good people were in Charlottesville to protest the...
Yeah, again, it's just white people. It's amazing, isn't it? Oh, I guess Antifa has some people of color. At least Antifa has 2 people of color in it, but only white people discuss this. Only white people are involved in this conversation. No, these people, the keep it up there, those people are racist pieces of crap. It's not heritage, it's horrific. It's treason. It's not heritage, it's shameful.
Removal of the Robert E. Lee statue.
It's absolutely fine to want to keep up the statue of someone who led an army in treasonous rebellion against the United States because he was white. That's okay.
The New York Times confirmed it in a story they published.
Wait. I thought the New York Times was terrible. It's wonderful how they just cherry-picked the New York Times.
August 16th. Good people can go to Charlottesville, said Michelle Percy, a night shift worker at a Wichita, Kansas retirement home who drove all night with a conservative group that opposed the planned removal of a statue of...
Racists can be good people can be racist too, says a racist white woman. I don't think you don't get to cite racists defending their own the morality of their racism as a source for whether or not you can be a racist and be a moral person and in the United States.
The Confederate General, Robert
It's just some random person anyway.
After listening to Mr. Trump on Tuesday, she said it was as if he had channeled her and her friends who had no interest in standing with Nazis.
I don't want to be seen as a Nazi. I just want to be politely racist. I just want to make sure that the people who were willing to enslave my fellow black citizens are treated as normal. And, that the fact that they were willing to destroy our union in order to own these people's ancestors and steal all their labor and kidnap their children and sell them off for property and not give them due process rights and kill them without recourse. Well, me defending that is just my heritage. No. White racists want to feel like they're still good people. And as long as American whites keep telling them, giving them these little excuses and outs, like, oh yeah, slavery wasn't your fault, so you don't have to do anything about it. Yeah, you might have white privilege, but don't actually acknowledge it in any meaningful way or try to reform it, because, that would make us feel uncomfortable. We don't want to make it socially unacceptable for you to be a racist, white woman. Michelle, we don't want to make you feel uncomfortable for your racist views in public. We'll just let other people pay the price of you feeling good about yourself. No. Just no. White people need to stop this shit. We need to wake up and call out this kind of stuff and point out the valid fact that if we don't change the white supremacy that we have inherited, we are just perpetuating it. And our discomfort is less important than the discrimination faced by real people in their daily lives who are not white. And also extends out to trans people, LGBT people, disabled people. There's a lot of people who go through crap in their daily life that we don't see, and us feeling like it's an insult to us to make us acknowledge it. We're not the ones who are being put out here.
Or white supremacists. There's another simple test that we can employ to prove that the president was not referring to the neo-Nazis as fine people.
Except he actually did. And him going on later and pulling out another group and saying these were fine people doesn't negate his initial statement when they were comparing white supremacists and Antifa and him saying there were fine people on both sides. He still said that.
It's so obvious, it's painful to mention. The president's daughter and son-in-law are Orthodox Jews.
Now they're going to hide behind his daughter's religious conversion. So that's his Jewish shield. I can't be a neo-Nazi. My daughter converted to Judaism. No. He is still the leader of the white supremacist movement in America.
His grandchildren
of course
are
he
Jewish.
Is. Oh,
and if that's
yes.
still not enough.
So now they're playing identity politics. You can't call the president a racist because his daughter is Jewish. Somehow, that's a transit. God. They really think people are idiots. They really think, oh yeah, well, clearly, magically all his stereotype about Jewish people disappeared when his daughter converted. No, that's not how these things work.
To convince you, how about this?
But I have black friends,
Does anyone believe that Donald Trump thinks they're a good Antifa? The leftist thugs who were counter-protesting the neo-Nazi thugs? After all, if those two groups were the only ones involved, and there were fine people on both sides, that means the president believed that there were fine Antifa people.
Is anyone else confused by this line of argument? Huh? All right, I'm going to let him keep going, because maybe he's got a point here.
Even MSNBC should have found that hard to swallow.
What? Wait. Is his argument here that Trump can't think there are any good people in Antifa? Does someone explain this to me? All right. And if that is still not enough to convince you, how about this? All right. Let's just, I really honestly, I don't understand this.
Does anyone believe that Donald Trump thinks they're a good Antifa?
Is the implication here that Donald Trump thinks all anti-fascists are bad? Is that what he's saying? Because he was basically saying is that there could be good white supremacists and good white Antifa people. But if Trump doesn't, I don't understand. I don't understand. Are they assuming that Trump thinks that if someone is Antifa, they are automatically evil? What?
The leftist thugs who were counter-protesting the...
Yeah, the people who are protesting white supremacists couldn't possibly have any good people in it? What?
Neo-Nazi thugs? After all, if those two groups were the only ones involved, and there were fine people on both sides, that means the president believed that there were fine Antifa people.
I think I got it right the first time. They are actually stupid enough. He was actually stupid enough to read out a script in which he's alleging that the president thinks that anyone associated with Antifa cannot be a good person. This is Prager logic. Clearly, the president couldn't have said there were fine people on both sides of the white supremacists because then he might be acknowledging Antifa people might not be terrible people. That is the stupidest thing I have heard today. That is idiotic. That is seriously. PragerU basically I can't believe that they're actually saying Donald Trump thinks anyone who is anti-fascist is a bad person. They are as bad as a white supremacist. There's only one group that benefits from equating anti-fascists to fascists. That's fascists.
Even MSNBC should have found that hard to swallow.
Why would again, MSNBC is not a person. There are a whole bunch of individual show hosts, like former Republican member of Congress Joe Scarborough, or media mogul Donny Deutsch, in addition to Joy Reid and Rachel Maddow and others. But of course, why treat people like individuals when you can use a lazy stereotype? It is PragerU. We're not meant to think, after all. Just accept.
Again, the very fine people on both sides President Trump described at the press conference
were white supremacists and the people protesting them.
Were the people who wanted to remove the Robert E. Lee statue.
White supremacists.
And the people who wanted to keep it.
Anti-fascists.
Both of these groups were nonviolent protesters.
No, there were violent... No. Again, there were white supremacists who didn't engage in violence. There were white supremacists who did. And there were anti-fascists who got caught up in it and anti-fascists who didn't. But...
Fine people with very different ideological views.
You can want to be a traitor and be a fine person. Again, this is excusing this soft white supremacy. As long as your white supremacy is about protecting the Confederate flag and the legacy of slavery and honoring those people who wanted to destroy our union, you're a fine person. No, you're a white supremacist. Your views are garbage and un-American.
The scandal of Charlottesville is not what President Trump said.
No, the scandal of Charlottesville is the fact that a woman was murdered protesting Nazis and the president didn't spend more time condemning not only the white supremacists who were taking part in violence, but anyone who would side with the traitorous Confederacy, long dead slaveholders and their disgusting worldview. That's the scandal of Charlottesville.
About neo-Nazis. It's what the media said President Trump said.
Nope. No.
About neo-Nazis.
Your lies.
It's a scandal because news reporting is supposed to be about gathering facts.
All right, and here he's just lied to us because, again, he said when talking about white supremacists and Antifa, there were fine people on both sides. And then a couple minutes later, as we saw, he went on to talk about different groups within it. But that doesn't negate his initial calling of white supremacists as very fine people.
Not promoting an agenda.
Yeah, the agenda Trump wants to promote is the Bannon agenda of white supremacy.
They got it exactly backwards.
No, they didn't. Only a white supremacist would want to advance this narrative.
We have been living with the consequences ever since.
We've been living with the consequences of white supremacy since, what was it, 1648? Or no, 400 years ago, when 1619, when slaves were first forced onto American soil. That's what we've been living with. Yeah, he didn't mention the Jews will not replace us crowd. Didn't mention that at all. Thank you for pointing that out, James. No mention about the Jews will not replace us marchers the night before. Were those very fine people? I'm going to vote this down because it's garbage. God, Prager, you are just...
Plainly put, ABC, CBS, NBC, NPR, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the others.
Wow. And is he missing out Fox News because they are the ones willing to defend white supremacists and a guy who is committing, violating his oath of office right on camera.
Spread a malicious lie that has poisoned our national dialogue.
Right. When you tell the truth about what the president says, that's poisoning the national dialogue. Again, you know who benefits from protecting white supremacists, defending white supremacists? White supremacists.
They should apologize to the American people
I want
for what they have done.
Prager, you should apologize for its complicity in undermining our constitutional values and wanting to destroy our notion of a republic by imposing a Christian theocracy. And I know Prager is supposed to be a fundamentalist Jewish guy, but he's totally sold out with the whole capitalist elite crowd in terms of his where he's thrown in. He's thrown in his lot with fundamentalists. So, all right, well, PragerU is crap, but we already knew that. They're garbage. So there they are defending the white supremacy of a white supremacist. So thanks you guys for watching with me, because, gonna be honest, I couldn't watch that alone. And yeah, I'm pretty lazy. Well, no, I'm not lazy when it comes to doing show stuff. So yeah, now that's over, so I hope you enjoyed that little takedown. Exposure of PU, P-UG, Prager-UG, as I put in the description. So just a little bit about my schedule. I'm going to try, as I more often, to do a weeknight winters. I want to do something more than just a Sunday show, but kind of one of the problems is the happy hour is just on a very random rotation. Like it's kind of as and when, so it's hard for me to schedule like a regular Wednesday show, because if I have a Wednesday show at like 7 and then I have a happy hour at 9, I might have the same content. But I am interested in doing some more because I wanted to make more recorded videos on white guilt and white shame and white identity in America, and kind of pushing back on other white people like Bill Maher, who want to define the terms on which white people can discuss the benefits of white supremacy that we experience, and in this very limited discourse space that they want to create. The challenge for me is now at work, I'm actually making videos at work. So I have to do like storyboarding and sort of script development. I have to design a set. I have to light it. I have to do the audio. I have to work with the talent and get them ready with media training. So what I find really exhausting at the end of the day, when I spent the whole day coming up, working on a video about social science data and social science data archives and accessing social science data, is to come home and make videos about other stuff. I just can't like double up on my hobby. But we'll see. That's going to be me through the end of this year. I will, though, try to get on air at least twice a week on my own show. The happy hour will be pretty much on my channel now till the end of the year, because Kevin got that copyright strike because the Nazis are trying to shut his channel down. You guys remember that from, I think it was an Andy No video or something. So, watch this space. The other challenge I'm having is that it doesn't, at least for me, if I set up a go live next, if I set it up the way I know, I can only do one episode in advance. So if I set up a week in advance, like this show for next Sunday, I only have one stream key. So if Kevin wants to do like, hey, let's do a happy hour because this news happened, I would then have to change the stream key to the new event. I can't even tell you what a pain in the ass it is to try to book things in advance on YouTube now. It's so incomprehensible. with the multiple number of stream keys they give you, and they promise you this reoccurring stream key, and then it doesn't freaking work. It's a nightmare. It's awful. It's terrible. I hate it. And as a consequence, I'm not able to schedule things really far in advance. So my apologies for that. But I will try to do, I think this is fun. We can just watch some, bad videos together, do some fair use commentary, and then the Sunday show as well. So that is going to be it for, it was an hour and a half. And with a break, that's a long enough show. The guy looked like a badly bruised toe. It was fun to chat. Good. I'm glad you guys had fun. The bad thing about, Alex is saying the bad thing about Charlottesville was that the bad media people poisoning the dialogue, not the Nazis attacking and killing people. Yeah, exactly. Once again, if you want to defend violent white supremacists, the way you can do that is by attacking the media who are criticizing and pointing out their violent white supremacy. Thank you guys for joining me. I have no reason why I won't be back next Sunday on air. So I will see you next Sunday, and inevitably we will have another happy hour on this channel right here. So have a good one, everyone, and I will talk to you maybe in the middle of the week. Till next time, I've been Christy. You have been awesome. Have a good rest of your day, your morning, your afternoon, your evening, wherever and whenever you are. Ciao. Ciao bella. Ciao bello. Tschüss.